they've done, basically polls in the stand, in the room. Who here has ever testified as a kid in their parents' divorce? Hands go up. It's kind of scary.
Hey everybody, welcome to our Nevada Judges Perspectives. I have a couple of special guests here today with me. I have Donna Wilburn.
Yes.
And I have attorney Jason Stoffel.
Correct.
Did I say that right?
Stoffel Waffle. You bet.
Stoffel Waffles. Okay, that's easy. And you are the founding members of the Nevada chapter of the AFCC. Is that correct?
Correct.
Hey.
We're part of a founding committee of people who have gotten together to create a Nevada chapter, finally, of the AFCC, Association of Family and Conciliation Courts.
Okay, so what does that mean?
So,
as a layperson, explain that to me.
So AFCC is a parent organization. It's an international organization of people who work within the family court arena, whether it be a therapist like myself, providing assessments, evaluations, treatment to families in conflict or post-divorce or in custody cases like that's going on with that, or as attorneys, judges, other professionals, mediators that also provide services, but it's mainly focused on family court type cases, high conflict custody cases. It's a group of specialists who are really dedicated to providing good services to that crowd.
How do you get involved in a case?
How do you get involved?
Well, a lot of it is just with recommendation of a judge. Some of the judges will say, we can have mom, dad, through their attorneys, tell me all kinds of he said, she said. That doesn't help me. I'm not going to interview your kids, but someone else perhaps could provide additional information to me to give me tools to help make the best decision possible. And, they don't defer judicial responsibilities on a therapist or mental health professional, but they just want to know information. If you see the dynamic of, little Susie and dad, and little Susie and mom, and then tell me what's going on to help me understand, then I'll read more than just the papers that are very high conflict advocacy. And you just want to give the judge the best information possible. And that's really what it comes down to.
So what we do is we work as a team. So the attorney is there in court and the judge needs information in order to make the best decision they can for these kids. So the attorney shares information, and then when information about family dynamics or parenting or personality profiles or issues at risk like domestic violence or anger issues or addiction issues, the court needs more information in order to make that decision, in order to make the best decision. And that's when they may recruit mental health providers to help them make that decision. So the best case scenario is when we're all working as a team. And this organization, AFCC, is all the members of the team in the same space,
Okay.
interacting with each other.
So you are requested by a judge, or can you as an attorney go to the judge and say, hey, I think we need to get this AFCC group involved in helping us do this? Or how exactly does that work? Or can a family member come to you and say, we need your help?
Both. Sometimes when a client comes in and says, here's what's going on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, what do I do? That's when I can say, well, do you have anyone in mind? Is there any therapy that's going on? Do you want a formal evaluation? What is it you want me to present to the judge? Because as an attorney, I'm kind of in the driver's seat, but I'm being told by the client, the passenger, if you will, what direction we're taking in this case. So if a judge doesn't recommend outsourced services, therapy, evaluations, and so forth, an attorney can simply just request that and do that in the pleadings. And then it comes down to, well, who is this person? There used to be a provider listed family court that was circulating, kind of buzzing around. They don't use that really anymore, but you just want to give the judge basically names of individuals that could help this family and ultimately help the judge. And most judges appreciate that. Judges know who are some of the better or more well-known professionals that do testify in court as needed. But sometimes it's not just for court purposes to say, I want this person to do the work they need to do and then take the witness stand and tell me what's what. I will say this, sometimes when there's written reports that are done well in advance of a hearing, that settles the case. You really understand what's going on when you read a report. If someone's not happy with the report, they can always challenge those findings, challenge recommendations. But it gives you the direction of what's going on. I would never want a case where there's a therapist or a mental health professional involved in the case. I get no notes, no status reports, no anything, If they're called to the stand, what do I need to know? That's a narrative. You could talk and testify for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Question, answer, question, answer. I shouldn't have to get to that point. I should see a report well in advance of that hearing, and that can be the fork in the road. Do I even need a hearing at this point, or will this recommendation be helpful? And most of the time, judges will have a status check hearing. Before there's an actual trial, they'll see, let's see the report from the professional to see what it says, to know what direction, because that might limit the need of outside witnesses. It might limit the need of more services. They'll never say that'll eliminate a trial, but a judge can absolutely say, with what's going on here, if they testify to anything similar to this report, here's what I'm inclined to do at trial. Take it for what it's worth, try to resolve it. So it also keeps costs down, knowing more information earlier on in the game.
Right. So there is also, if I'm not mistaken, there is an organization of advocates for the children in family courts. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
So if you're talking about the CASA workers.
That's it. Yes, thank you.
So that tends to be children who are in like foster care or
Okay.
child abuse cases. When you're working in family court, and this is something I really want to make clear to everybody listening and in the future, working with high conflict custody cases is a specialty. Not everyone can do it. And as a therapist, we are not trained on how to work with high conflict dynamics during our basic educational development.
Right.
Okay. Same with attorneys.
Correct.
Okay. So what this AFCC is it's an organization that we can become members of. Okay. It's kind of like a national, like a specialist organization.
Right.
So when
A resource.
providers, yeah, it's like a resource list,
Right.
right? So at least you know that if someone is a member of AFCC, at least you have some confidence in their knowledge of what is high conflict custody. Because as a therapist, and I'm going to tell you, this is risky because you're making decisions. The court is making decisions about children's livelihoods, and these decisions can affect children's psychological development and their whole future. So the court needs as much information and as accurate information as it can get. As a therapist, I am telling you, there's a lot of therapists who are doing assessments, evaluations, treatment for the court who are not trained in how to work with high conflict custody cases. So they're in fact like possibly hurting these children or not protecting the children as much as they could. So as if I was in a court decision-making role, I would want to know that whoever I have working on this high conflict case is educated and especially trained on how to work with this high conflict case. That's what AFCC brings.
And you guys are just getting started here in Nevada. I mean, the AFCC has been around for like 5 or 6 decades in other parts of the country.
Correct.
Why hasn't Nevada got in on this yet? Or
Good question.
Yeah,
We don't know,
question.
but I guess if nothing else, if there's not a chapter, why not? If
Right.
Utah does, California does, and Arizona and other states do. And also, I believe it's November of this year, there's a symposium, a child custody symposium, AFCC conference in Las Vegas in November. I would think it'd be embarrassing at this point in the game to
To
not
not-
have a chapter,
Right.
yet AFCC said, let's go to Vegas and have a conference. So more the reason why not. And also stay ahead of some cutting edge technology. Now that we have issues with Zoom and other things, video conferencing, video chat, video therapy, and COVID in general. There's a lot of things that are being done in other states that we ought to look at that. Does that work in Nevada? Does that not work in Nevada? That makes sense.
And there's something, I've lived in Nevada since the 70s, okay? And it still has that small town mentality a
Yes.
little bit, where we aren't as connected with each other. We aren't as big city education, like high profile cases here. We don't have that so much. So there's a little bit of a lag with Nevada getting on to become a chapter with AFCC. So I understand the dynamics of Nevada and it being a little bit of a small town, but I'd say now we are a big city now.
yeah, we are now.
Okay? We have so many cases, so many high conflict cases that we really need to take this seriously. So to me, it's a way of making us serious. Like, okay, now we're serious. We want to do a good job with this crowd. So we need to be serious about the providers, the attorneys that are working on this. And they should have something in their background to say, yes, I'm capable of working with this case. And that, to me, that's what AFCC is bringing to Nevada, is some credibility.
So how are you being viewed by the family court system here? I mean, are they welcoming you? Are they aware of what's about to happen here and what you're putting together?
I would say at this point, no, and that's why we're here, to get the word out, to see what's what. And Donna's involved in other organizations. I'm involved in other organizations. We both bring certain experience and just life, past experiences with cases, clients, and who we are. It's helpful, but it also adds to credibility, because if we have a common goal, trying to do what's right by families, we know the judges get the ultimate say, and I believe in a lot of cases, children should get a voice, but not always a choice. I think it's a phrase Donna's told me or taught me one time way back when. But it rings true, though, because how do you do that? Short of putting little Billy or Susie on the stand, having outside influence and experts that get involved in these cases, it's tools to help the judge make the best decision. I know it sounds like a broken record, but there are studies, and Donna probably knows about some of these studies, that when kids testified in their child custody matter or the parents' divorce case and they were a witness, they remember what color tie, whether it's a red tie or whatever, one of the attorneys had. They remember, what someone looked like, or it was a Thursday and it was raining that day. There's trauma. There's trauma and stress that is developed. And maybe 30 years ago, that was the way it was done. To say, you know what, let's have the 10-year-old tell me what they want to do, what they think is in their best interest. So now we kind of shy away from that to say, now there's studies involved. 40-year-old adults saying, 30 years ago, here's what happened in my case. And different conferences I've attended, they've done, basically polls in the stand, or in the room. Who here has ever testified as a kid in their parents' divorce? Hands go up. It's kind of scary. So the idea is, by having outside reports and outside evaluations and so forth, or just testimony from someone that's basically being an advocate for a child or children, that shields children from conflict in more cases than not.
Well, I would think, my understanding is that the caseload in the family court system is extremely overwhelming. It's just burying these judges. So I can see where this organization could help take some of the pressure off and make it a speedier trial or more effective, and the judge would have it. I mean, when you have two people arguing, it's hard to sit up there, I imagine, and make a decision on who's right or who do I believe, or am I doing the right thing? And if you have an outside source, a disinterested, objective parties that can say, here's the facts, this is what's really going on, and you can now make your judgment.
I have to say I'm very proud of the judges that we have on the bench right now. There are some who have been on there a while who are very aware and educated about what high conflict dynamics are and how it can influence what you're hearing from the child or what you're hearing from the parent. And then we have some newly elected judges that I'm so proud of, because they're really taking the high conflict dynamics seriously, and they're not just going with, whatever someone says must be accurate, whatever the child says must be accurate. Because when a child is so triangulated into that parent drama, they aren't clear. Their thoughts and feelings aren't clear to them. And so in the past, all they do is, what does the child feel, like Jason was saying, whether it be on the stand or interview, and then just take that for granted, and that must be how it is, without looking underneath and like what's influencing that child's feelings, what's affecting how that child feels about their parent. So the folks that we have on the bench right now, we have some really, really good and educated and aware judges that I think, looking forward, with attorneys and therapists working as a team now, and the judges being educated and aware, I really have a lot of hope about how we can protect kids in the future, and how we can prevent them from being as traumatized by what their parents are going through as they have been in the past. This affects children's whole future, okay?
Yeah. I being the child of a divorced parents, parents got a divorce when I was 6 and my sister was 5. And the one thing that I've always been grateful is I never heard my mother say a bad thing about my father, and I never heard my father say a bad thing about my mother.
You were lucky.
And
Good
we
for
were.
you.
And you know, the time that I spent with my father and the time that I spent with my mother, it was, we were. When I see some of the other things that have gone on over the years,
Yeah.
it's like, whoa. So,
Yeah, it gets pretty bad, and it puts a child at risk for depression, unhealthy relationships in their future, suicidal. I have had
sure,
kids.
because that's what they think. That's what they see. That's what they
Yeah.
think is supposed to happen.
I have had kids come into me with suicidal attempts and suicidal thoughts just because of the pressure of being in the middle of that parent trauma.
Yeah.
And once we were able to relieve that pressure and get them out of that, they could flourish. But just that put them at such a high risk and in such a bad place that they were wanting to kill themselves because of it. And so we have to protect these kids.
Yeah,
And
because
that's what the AFCC is trying to do, is have us work together to protect these kids.
so you're just starting this. You're just starting this chapter. Is it just the two of you, or how many
Now, what
others?
do we have on there? Maybe 10?
About 10 or 12, I can't think of all the names, but there's
Okay.
3 judges and about, I think, 8 or 9 other individuals from
Yeah, we have some
therapists,
providers,
psychologists,
some
providers,
therapists, mediators,
attorneys,
attorneys, judges. We got a really motivated committee
Correct.
going right now
That's excellent.
to get this going, and I have no doubts that we will have a chapter. We only need 75 members
Right.
of the parent organization to actually become a chapter, and I think we're going to get that within the next couple
And
months.
what are the qualifications? What are you looking for in members?
I
what are
think-
you- what are
what's
you trying
I don't
to-
think it needs a qualification to become a member of the
Correct.
chapter.
of the actual organization, and then you can become part of a chapter once you're a member of
Right.
the AFCC. It's really just interest and a desire to say, you know, I want to be part of a train of progress to move things forward in a better direction. And just, you know, going through the website the other day, and I guess we'll link that to our this program that we have here, so it's on there. But you can see, once you're a member, what other resources are available. You can go on there, click on, you know, different models of parenting plans, different theories, different data, different research, and also conferences as well, because there might be a conference in your backyard, and by golly, there's one in November in Las Vegas,
Right.
in 2022 this year.
So excited.
So, yeah,
So
that's
excited.
good.
And so that's a place where the people who are interested can go get information. So it's a networking resource organization.
That is true.
Yeah.
Educational. The
Educational.
guides and there's one guide on the AFCC site called Court Involved Custody or Court Involved Provider. If you are a therapist and your client is involved in a family court case, you need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because either you can be called in, like Jason said, and you won't know what to say, or you may be called in to give a report, or they may request your notes. You need to know what you're doing, and there is a lovely, very involved guide on, if you're working with these court cases, follow these rules so that you protect yourself and you protect your
Yeah,
client.
that was another
Right?
thing too. You know, I don't have much to offer. We have the studio here, but if there is any way that we can be of help to you guys putting this together, I think what you're doing is absolutely awesome. I think it's needed,
It is.
and it's nice to see us heading down the right direction.
Yay, Nevada.
Yes, go team.
You go.
How are you funded? Is there a cost involved? In other words, if the judge says, "Hey, I need to get somebody in here to tell me this," is this does the court pay this? Does the parents pay this, or how does that work?
So
Or have you figured that out yet?
AFCC is a membership organization. So
Okay.
the court is not going to call AFCC for services. But the court and attorneys can look at the background of the providers.
Okay.
And people in high conflict divorce cases can look at their attorney's background and say, once they see they're a member of AFCC, that can give the family, the client, some confidence that maybe this person knows what they're doing. Maybe they have
But how does the
some
family
education.
know that?
So
How does the family know what to ask about their attorney, or you know, you have a couple that's going into court, they're about to get a divorce, they got a couple of kids, they're fighting over custody. Where do they get information about where can I go for help?
Right, and that would be to me, the attorney's the first line
Okay.
of defense for them, because then the attorney goes to court and the court will assign a provider, but the attorney has to help with knowing which provider.
Right.
So let's say a family is looking for an attorney, and how would they know? And I've had to, help families out because they don't know
Right.
what kind of attorneys or who to go to get help with high conflict cases.
Right. A lot of times you go to court and they'll say, we need to get a therapist involved in this case. And, without name dropping, we'll just go ahead and look at your social services coverage on your health insurance and basically say this is not for court purposes, for testifying and so forth. It's only for therapy for the kids.
Right.
So because of that, you can have that so that it might be covered under insurance. They can do that. But usually, if there's an attorney, they can hopefully have knowledge and guidance to the court and to the family on this. But if there's no attorneys involved, then sometimes the judges will just say, here's what is needed in this case. Because if people go to court, they're scared to death in most cases.
Of course.
They don't know what to expect.
Right.
They don't know if they're going to jail. They don't know of anything. They don't know what their due process rights are, if they even have any rights. What's the law? I mean, they just don't know. I mean, they watch enough, stuff on TV. It could be a kangaroo court. Anything could happen.
Right.
So can I ask a question to
Yes,
Jason?
please.
So
Sure.
you're, as an attorney, how can someone feel confident that you know what you're doing in a high conflict case?
Gotcha.
Because there's a lot of family law attorneys out there,
Correct.
but not all of them know about those really intricate dynamics of high conflict when you got personality disorder profiles going on and resistance, refusal dynamics with the children going on. How can I, if I'm going, trying to find the right attorney,
Right.
how do I know the difference?
A lot of times people don't ask enough questions. When I do my legal consultations, and now we're doing them all over the phone, it's not as easy as, a 30-minute consultation. You can get only so much information.
Right.
People come in, they say, here's what's going on, and tell me all these facts. Let them vent for 5-10 minutes, and then you hear the pause, they got whatever they had on their chest off their chest.
Right.
And a lot of times I'm like, okay, now here's what, here's why you either need me, here's why you perhaps don't need me. Some people come in, they say, I'm the dad, I want to guarantee joint custody, I win. Or flip side, I'm the mom, and I want child support and happily ever after. There are certain people that come in with certain biases and just incorrect information. Not to sound arrogant, but sometimes you have to put people in their place. If they say, well, my sister told me blah, 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 blah. I have to pause and say, can I say this without sounding too condescending? And I don't want to be condescending.
Yeah, where did your sister get her law degree?
That is exactly my question. And they'll say, well, they didn't. I said that you might want to listen to me, and I'll give you options. You're not my client right now,
Right.
of course, but I want you to get information that you need to know. And a question you didn't ask me was blah, blah, blah. So before someone even knows what questions to ask, they want to know, or they should know, what questions that they should ask me. And if nothing else, what are my qualifications? Does every case have to go in front of a judge? There are some attorneys that will tell people, if you retain me, we're going to trial. This is how I do it. It's my show. Thank you, click, hang up. I mean, you can move on, and if that's what you want, there's people out there.
Right.
But just asking enough questions. What is their experience? Is there conferences? Is there law? Is there different things? And also trial experience. There are some attorneys that talk that big talk, but have never been to court. They don't know how to present a case, or now, more than ever, do they know how to present a case virtually?
Yeah.
With the Blue Jeans app now, which is like Zoom for court, have they ever done a custody trial or divorce trial, whatever type of trial, with that technology? And how to admit exhibits, how to go through, and how to do the shared screen thing. There's more technology than ever since spring of 2020 that have to know that. So really, you got to tell individuals seeking legal services, here's why you need me, here's what I can offer to you to assist you.
Yeah.
People need to know
I
that.
would say
And some of that is distracting.
Right.
That takes away from what you're trying to do as an attorney.
Right.
So if you have to deal with that in addition to whatever it is that you're dealing with from the clients, so
Right.
sorry, I didn't mean to.
that's right. I would say if you're looking for a therapist, let's say a lot of folks, the court just says go find a therapist to help you with reunification, or go find a therapist to help your child with their relationship with their parent. I would say for folks out there who are looking for a therapist that can work really well with this high conflict dynamic, is look at their training, look at their resume, look at their curriculum vitae. Like, do they have specialized training in assessing and treating families in high conflict? That is a specialized training. So if you're going to take that court order and go out there and find someone, you want to make sure they have specialized training, because you may have to end up going back to court if they didn't, and that whole time will be wasted.
So you keep talking about high conflict situations.
Correct.
Paint a picture for me. Just give me an example of what you mean by that in layman's terms.
What is high conflict
It can
custody?
It can mean a lot to anyone, but if nothing else, when I consider a case high conflict, I look at the way, in writing, and usually text messages, how people communicate and cooperate.
Okay.
If they ask a simple question, am I picking up the kids at 6 or 7? Send. And the response is, figure it out, jerk, or other creative words.
All right.
Not answering questions. And basically, whatever happened to the golden rule, right? I mean, treat people how you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Simple questions. And I look at it objectively, and hopefully it's not my client, because they won't be my client long, if they're not being civil and halfway professional. And 2 a.m. rants don't count as, but it was 2 a.m. and it was 3 glasses of wine in. It doesn't matter. So a high conflict is just, you can cut the tension with a knife. You know
Okay.
when you see it.
Got
It's
it.
basically the best way to say
Yeah,
it.
they're not cooperating. They
Correct.
don't like each other. They can barely be around each other. And the child is getting, whether it be direct or indirect, the child is getting feedback that one parent does not like the other parent.
It's a lot of negative energy for that child
Yes.
to deal with in
Yes.
the situation. So
And that affects the child a lot.
A lot.
yeah, so
Right.
it does.
Yeah.
Right.
So high conflict cases are, I tell people, it's a whole different ballgame. You have cooperative custody cases, parents getting along, they can be around each other, flexible with each other, working together, can be in the same room, no drama, no cops at school. And then you got the high conflict cases, and I work with a lot of kids, okay? So this is what the kids tell me. And this is the whole, how many kids in high conflict cases have had cops at their house or at their school? How many kids in high conflict cases have had more than one therapist involved in their life? How many kids in high conflict cases have been to court, heard about court, had to testify for court, been interviewed for court? Those are the high conflict cases.
Okay.
Right. I'll even go one step further. I've had a number of cases where when people want to influence children in a certain way indirectly. And what I mean by that is I had one case, and I won't name names, of course, but all the court files were easily accessible to a child, not where you should put things. In other words,
Oh, you mean
don't-
in the home situation
Yes.
or outside of the court situation?
Don't,
Okay. I
right.
get it.
In
Yeah.
other words, don't put the motion of the reply in opposition right in front of the toaster and say,
Right.
go butter your toast now.
Yeah.
Children are curious. They can read certain
Sure.
things, and sometimes they said, I read it in study hall, in school. So when you not only involve children, I mean, it's just bad news. Because when children know when court is, parents sometimes like to say that, oh, today's the day, I'm going to win, or you'll get what you want. No go. I mean,
Yeah.
people just do the wrong things at the wrong time. And the thing, I guess, to point out is they don't realize what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah, I'd
or
say
is
in
harmful.
90% of the
That's
cases,
what
they're
I'm
not doing
focusing
it on
on, right.
purpose.
Right.
Right. They don't know any better.
They're
or
not
they just
aware.
think they're not doing anything. It's maybe their personality comes into play. It's like, I didn't share anything. I just happened to leave it by the toaster.
Yeah.
Haha.
So the obvious question that I have to ask, it seems to me like there's a lot of work involved here. Why would you do this? What brought you to this and said, hey, we need to do this. It's time, and nobody else is doing it.
Regarding
it's
the
gonna be
chapter? Or
yeah, regarding the AFCC chapter.
I don't know. What made the timing? I don't know. But I think it was just time.
I agree. That's the only thing I can think of is just when you see other conventions and conferences, and some of them are in fun places. Of course, Las Vegas is always fun, but I've gone to a couple of them in Sedona, and I'm like, well, gee, why isn't there these conferences in Nevada or to be organized in that way, and just learning from different people, because just because a convention is in another state doesn't mean everyone's from that state. There's
Right.
a lot of people that are from other states,
Sure.
down in Arizona, California, what have you. So it's time. I think that's the
It's
best way to
time.
put it. It's time.
So part of your goal or your what you're trying to accomplish here is getting the word out that you're here, what you're about, and to your target audience, which would be attorneys, judges, and letting them know that there is a resource here that they can draw from.
Right.
Well, like I said, however I can help, I'm happy to do that for you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
We could use all the help we can get right now.
That
Sure.
And the
Don't
step
we
one,
all?
yeah, right. The step one is to become a member of the parent organization.
Okay.
So if you're interested in working with this crowd, if someone's interested in being a part of this team of protecting children and helping families, join the parent organization, and
Yeah.
then when we become an official chapter, join the chapter.
Right, and we'll put the website up on the screen so that you'll be able to go there. I've checked out the website. There's an enormous amount of information, and it was almost overwhelming.
It is.
You know, trying to get a few notes here to talk reasonably intelligently to you. But I thought it was fascinating. I think it's something that, you know, my kids are all grown. I'm divorced, but you know, our kids were all grown, and we're still friends.
So your experience, you said you had divorced parents.
Yes.
Would teach you something, and then because you had a good experience, you knew that you can have a good experience.
Exactly.
These kids who are triangulated into parent drama end up being parents eventually also, and they tend to do the same
Well,
thing.
because that's what they know.
Right.
That's what they've experienced. And I think that because of my experience, I think it helped me understand that, okay, you and I no longer, after 48 years, you know, we've decided you're going that way, I'm going this way. Okay, you know, see you later. But like I said, we're probably better friends now than we were the last few
Together.
years of our marriage. But that's neither here nor there. So, but I'm just fascinated, and I want to ask some kind of stupid questions. As an attorney, can you bring to mind the worst example of a situation in court that you've experienced personally? Without naming names?
Well, I'm just thinking of so many different things I can think of. I will say this. There are certain cases you remember when people leave things on a recording or they know they're being recorded.
Right.
And when they hear how they sounded in court, they just clamor up in embarrassment. And I can think of one case, and it was a horrible case. It was a termination of parental rights case. And the voicemails that the dad was leaving on mom's cell phone, 2, 3 in the morning, he was burping, belching, you could tell he was completely intoxicated, threatening the mom in so many words with sexual assault and all of her friends to basically assault other people. And when it was played in court, the judge looked at this person like, you are some, yeah. Words are not enough. And at one point, the judge had to storm off the bench to say, I couldn't hear this. And the gentleman, I kind of looking over, his attorney was kind of like, you don't need to see my client. He was so embarrassed. I had to watch the video after the trial to basically see, because I couldn't see him.
Right.
I was looking across the table.
Gotcha.
And seeing that, I was like, this is what people need to realize. And then creative objections. Well, he didn't know he was being recorded. When it said, my name is so-and-so, leave a message. Beep. What part of that says I'm probably going to be recorded? Okay, that's one of them. And then I had another case, just more neutral thing, I guess, whereas the dad in the case was basically being real jerky and cocky to the mom. He thought it was a good idea to be annoying, and what I mean by that is he said the mom's name nonstop for over 10, 12 minutes, the same name, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to prove my point to the court. This is high conflict. What human being would want to say this? And he was not on any drugs. He was not it was a personality disorder beyond all belief. And I said, I want to prove a point. I want to play this in court as long as the court will let me, or as long as the dad in the case says, I've heard enough. And it was like about a 10, 12 minute recording. And we pushed play in court. And it was the same name. 6.5 minutes later, I've heard enough. I say it for 20 minutes. And I'm like, there you go, Judge. I've made my point.
So it's kind of like mom.
Exactly. And that was my point of it, is just saying, this is what we had to deal with. Someone that is such a jerk. You can't co-parent. It's like nailing Jello to a wall. You can't work with someone that's like that.
Right.
But I can put it in writing. That doesn't prove my point. To the point where he's going to blow up and say, stop it, I can't take it anymore. When he's objecting to his own recording, I have made my point.
Yeah.
And it's sad that I have to get to that point, but when you want to be objective, I can't say the person's first name, in 20 minutes and typing it up. You got to hear it at some point, because at some point it's like, and I didn't tell the judge how long it was.
Right.
I said, there's a pretty lengthy recording. Can I push play? And we're good. I was waiting, and I could just see him kind of squirming and just kind of, I was waiting for him to snap or crack or whatever you want to call it. And so I made my point. So it's just, a judge has to see objectively, if this is what's happening behind closed doors, and he knew he was being recorded.
Right.
How can co-parenting be possible? How can we have a joint physical custody situation when you're dealing with that type of drama and that type of silliness? And I'm like, point. Done.
Okay, so how about the case that you walked away from going, that's why I do this?
There's too many of them. There's too many of them that I'm looking at it.
See, and that's good to hear.
I don't think we would be doing this if it wasn't for those ones.
Yes. and I'll say, sometimes I get a report, whether I agree with everything or not, that someone might prepare. I'm looking at it objectively, as objectively as I can, to say, this is what a judge is going to see. Maybe I drank the client Kool-Aid. Maybe I am so focused on what they said and just ignoring their negative.
Right.
It's all positive, because that's what I know. I'm an advocate. But I want to see, no, there's not a perfect parent. But this is perhaps the more perfect of the two parents. When I see a report that says involving the child, involving litigation, the toaster incident, all these things, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at it and I say, this person's money is better spent saving up for college than a trial that they're going to have to pay me for to perhaps lose. And there's no winners or losers in family court. As the old saying is, there's just degrees of losing, as they always say. But it's obviously knowing when a case is not appropriate for a trial, when you're not going to prevail and you're not going to make the best argument for your client. At some point, judges will say, I'm giving you the trial date, but after reading this report, good luck with that. So as an advocate, you have to look at it and say, look, there's ways to resolve this case, because you can't unhear things. And I always tell people that if your co-parent says horrible things about you, you're going to remember that the rest of your life. But right now, we can try to work this out and basically go with terms you can live with. You might not love or like every term, but if you can live with it, because the other catch-all is, we could put on the best case and you're going to pay for two attorneys, one you like, one you don't.
Yeah.
So you could have some significant financial ruin. Do you want to eat soup for the next year or two? Or do you want to be real and say, maybe this proposal that I want is not attainable, not reasonable? So you got to be real with people. And sometimes they need to hear that, but they don't hear it until it's too late in the game. So when you have an organization like AFCC or other organizations that want to promote mediation, want to promote settlement to some degree, you want to find out where you're at in your case, the old litmus test, before trial. Because if you're going to trial, you find out halfway through, or I've had many of those bad lunches with a client saying, we are so done, they're going to bury us twice.
Yeah.
You want to know that well in advance. And again, children benefit in most cases, for a settlement that they can, maximize the time with both parents, because otherwise you think it's bad at the time of trial. When you're hit with attorney fees, you're going to be more venomous. Every time you see that child, you're the reason that I had to pay more to that blah, 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 other attorney. It can get ugly and nasty. So you want to be aware of that and limit conflict to the extent possible.
Are there alternatives for these families that are obviously not high conflict outside of the family court system? Are there resources or alternatives that they can go to, excuse me, rather than having to go through the court systems?
Well, yes, I can chime in. The easiest one is the Family Mediation Center.
Okay.
FMC is the organization. It's a court annex program, part of family court. That any case involving custody, there has to be mandatory mediation. It's an attempt, a good faith attempt, to work out disputes, visitation, custody, how to define certain things, holidays, religious holidays, so forth. How you define those things. I would say 70 to 80% of the time, there's either a full or a partial parenting plan. Sometimes people can't even agree on Mother's Day and Father's Day. That sounds silly, but I had a client one time that he wanted Mother's Day because his new wife has her kids.
Yeah.
So we're going to fight on Mother's Day. And I'm like, oh, good golly. Are we really going to make that argument?
Yeah.
That doesn't pass the straight face test.
Yeah.
So that's one of the easiest ones. And there's also private attorneys that do mediation services that basically they're jointly retained and they're just basically being an arm of the court without any authority in the sense of they can't flip a coin and say dad wins.
Right.
It's not arbitration, it's mediation. As usually they'll say, when you start a mediation process, it's confidential. What stays in this room is going to stay in this room. It's not going to leave this room. It's not going to be, I'm not going to rat you out to the judge. I'm not going to do a report. Either we come to an agreement or not.
But if they come to an agreement, if mediation is successful with the people involved, is it necessary to go into court?
No.
Okay.
Excellent question. That it just has to get drafted up, whatever the settlement agreement is, the parenting plan, and it's basically incorporated into a final decree of child custody. It's sent to the judge, and the judge will look at it, rubber stamp it, and make sure, well, before they rubber stamp it, make sure that everything's in there that has to be in there. It never could say vague terms, like mom gets reasonable visitation.
Right.
It's got to be with some degree of specificity. And you also can't say no child support, period. They generally will reject those now because they want to know how you came to that point. Maybe the incomes are similar. Maybe they're not similar, but because of the timeshare and someone's paying a large amount of health insurance for the children, there's a reason. There's deviation factors up or down. But it's got to be specific enough. The judges usually are not going to look at it and try to undo an agreement.
Right.
But they just want to have findings of fact or just reasons
But
why
they're just
we should adopt
looking
it.
for red flags or something
Absolutely,
that maybe
yeah.
something was missed administratively or something like that. Okay.
Correct, exactly. And sometimes child support is just missed out. People just don't put it in there. Judges will routinely reject those and say, I have to have that information, and I have to reject it for that purpose. And they're not in the business of rejecting it because they think the wrong result is reached. They'll rubber stamp it and they're good, but no hearing is required to finalize it. And then that'll, most times we'll just vacate a trial. There's no need for a trial if there's a full agreement between the two parents with or without counsel.
Right.
So let me tell you on my end,
Please.
in order to avoid
Because I was
trials-
going to ask you.
Yeah, well, I'm going to have to share. So what I've noticed is, and it working with a lot of attorneys, they may notice their client is maybe predisposed or in that high conflict mentality, and they'll send them in for some coaching or some treatment just to help their client be more level-headed and less ego-based. Okay, so whether it be parent coaching before you even go to mediation so that you can be more level-headed, or if parents are realizing that their conflict is making it difficult for them to co-parent, you can work with a specialized therapist who can coach parents regarding healthy communication, how to get past your own hurt, how to avoid influencing your child, what those subtle little behaviors are that are hurting your child. So if you can get, and I because I'm appointed a lot, it's usually 10 years after they've had so much conflict.
Right.
But if, let's say, going into a divorce situation, or you've just separated and gotten a divorce and you're noticing that it's difficult to cooperate, get the help from a specialist early, and you can prevent many, many, many hearings and trials in the future if parents can address it's usually pain, it's their own wound that they are having a hard time healing from that's affecting their ability to cooperate. So if you can attend to that early on, you can avoid so much court involvement. So I promote to attorneys and families, get your help early. Get in there even before they get divorced. I have many attorneys sent to me like, can you help this one parent? Just this one parent's having a really hard time with this divorce process. Can you help the one? And even by helping one, it affects the whole process.
Of course, yeah. Are there any is there any financial aid available to families going through divorces and going through the court systems, because that can get expensive? If is there any place that they can go? Because as a layperson, I'm thinking, okay, well, whoever's got the gold's going to rule. You know what I mean? If one spouse can't afford an attorney and the other one can,
Right.
is there any way to even that playing field to make it more equitable for all the parties involved? Or is that something that AFCC can
Yeah, I don't think
alleviate?
AFCC does funding.
They don't do funding.
No, I don't mean about the funding, but
Okay.
I'm saying at
Right.
least figure out a way to.
Well, let me ask it this way, or answer it this way. there are some people that I say you need not only an attorney, but you also need, therapists and other
Right.
mental health professionals involved. Now, if I look at someone's income and say you can't afford both, now sometimes I have to do what's right for the client, which you do, and to say, look, if I take this case pro bono or for free, I'm the one that's quote quote losing out on a income from a case. But if they qualify because they're low income or whatever the case is, I can always tell them to go to the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada to qualify for a pro bono service. Attorneys have an aspirational goal of 20 hours per year to basically low cost, no cost to the public. And there's a handful of cases I've taken over my 18 years doing it that I'm like, okay, you're going to qualify, or at least do your application, qualify, come back, and then when we see the judge, having me withdraw isn't really a reality anymore because I'm
Right.
on it for the full haul, if you will. And I can say, Judge, I'm pro bono, so there are now more funds available for this mom or this dad to pay for the services that they need, not only as an advocate, because if I'm pro bono, I'm not expected to get paid.
Right.
Now, let me say this, if I have the lesser earning spouse, there's case law on point that basically allow attorneys that are working for free to request the other side to assist in attorney fees as if they were being paid. There's a legal basis for it.
Okay.
And it's great if you get paid. If it's not, it's not. But what I'm saying
But that's up to the attorney to know that, right?
Correct, correct.
Because your client's not going to know that
correct.
that's available.
And that's why I have a knowledgeable attorney to basically present that to the court to say, look, it's not like we're going to appoint all these therapists. They can't afford it because they're paying for me. And why have a trial? Because everyone's going to withdraw by the time of trial. Mm-hmm. I made many arguments to the court to say, look, if I'm going to be trial counsel, if this case goes to trial, because they're not paying me, there's more resources that they have to pay mental health professionals. This will only help the family. I can always make an attorney fee request at trial if they're being unreasonable, if the
Right.
Therapist or whatever saying, look, this person is much more the cause of the problem. It's not a joint problem, it's a one-sided deal. That can always be presented there. But what I'm saying is judges just want to know, if I do certain things, does it matter if you're going to just withdraw anyway? Some judges will make those comments. They say,
Right.
are you retained for trial or is this all just noise? So if someone has an attorney through like Legal Aid or other organizations that are available, Nevada Legal Services is another, they can go to their websites and go and qualify based on their income. The main thing. And then again, we would then have more resources to say, spend the money you would have probably spent on me to get the services that would just benefit your children. And because I know many therapists might do either reduced cost, low cost, whatever the case is, and I can't comment on that. But what I do know is sometimes it's cost prohibitive to have too many cooks in the kitchen,
Right.
and that's why if we're able to say, look, this might be a case, and I got a big heart, I try to help as many people as I can, but sometimes it's just
But
not
you still have to
possible.
pay your bills
We
too.
still have to pay our bills too. So that's why I usually have one or two on at any given time, a pro bono case, and that's why when I know a family needs services, it makes it much easier to get services paid for when they're not paying for an attorney as well.
Right.
Right. And on my end, I've had many call me ahead of time and, can you see my child and then take it to court? And I'm like, hold on, that is not the best way to use my services. You want to wait until either the court appoints me or the court orders it or okays it. And I've had to do that. And I'm like, you don't have money that you can waste on working with me now when you may need to work with me later or work with someone later. So just like how Jason does, you have to assess with the client and be like, where is their money best used?
Right.
How can you best help their child? Maybe that means saying no right now in order for their child to get the help they need later.
Can the client or the client's request of the court that help, or saying we think that a therapist would be,
Through their attorney, they typically, that's how it works.
Okay, all
Their
right.
attorney, qualified family law attorneys or people who are familiar with high conflict dynamics
Okay, gotcha.
know to use a therapist or know when to say
Gotcha.
we need to bring a therapist in here.
Okay.
And they'll tell their client that I think you need this resource in your case, but you have to go to the court and get the court to okay it first, or else it's a waste of money.
Correct.
The
So
court
how,
may say,
how do
I don't
you,
care.
if you have a client that says, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm not seeing a therapist, how do you handle a situation
You
like
had
that?
The first thing, if I believe, option A, and they say I don't need help, I'm an angel, and the other person's got horns and all this other craziness, I have to ask myself, am I a good fit for this person?
Right.
Because they're not going to take my advice, or
Right.
as I would see it, because I have to be objective to say, look, I'm your advocate. I'll make the argument that I think needs to get made, But as a judge, if he thinks I'm full of hot air based on what you're saying, if I don't have facts to back it up, or if someone says, here's the history, do you have any proof, any evidence, any text messages, proof of this, proof of that? If some people don't, I say, look, I believe you, but a judge might not.
Yeah.
So if you can't get the story straight and tell the tale of the tape, if you will, so I can present it to the court, you're wasting your time. So I have to first know if I'm a good fit for the person, explain to them what a judge would expect and what standards that they would apply when they hear different things. Because I even see some attorneys that'll have like handwritten letters from a child as a court exhibit filed with the court, and then there's a hearing and the judge is like, am I really reading this? Because I read the first, dear judge, and blah, 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 signed Billy. Not only is that totally, the judge can actually strike that and also sanction people to say, look, what were you thinking? And if there's an attorney that filed it, they're held to a higher standard anyway. And it's amazing what some people will do to basically get evidence in, bootstrap it, and kind of backdooring in without using a qualified professional that could assist the court. Just a dear judge signed by the child is a terrible way to present information of what you think is best. And as attorneys, we want to just provide solutions, offer options to a client. Here's what I think you need is best. And a lot of times I get that out of the client right at the consultation, because I've told people, this is what I think is the best approach. If you're not in agreement, then maybe I'm not the right fit. So if you can get that information right before they're a client, better off, because some people will have a 10-minute consultation, get someone on board, and then you realize we are way far apart from our goals here. Maybe I should have taken the client. Me doing this long enough, you want to weed people out, and I hate to say it like that, but you have to do that. Mm-hmm. You have to make sure to know what their goals are and are they realistic. Right. Because if they're not, you got reputation, and you don't want to take anything that walks through the door. And some clients, some attorneys will take whatever walks through the door.
And the things they say to their clients are not accurate.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Well, I think that when you're in the middle of all of this stuff, we tend to forget, or people tend to forget, that everything that they do, this child is seeing, hearing, experiencing, and what you think is best for the child could be way out in left field.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we also see things, even with like technology, like I was saying earlier, with kids now have cell phones. When I first started doing this 18 years ago, kids didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
Now 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds have cell phones. And you have certain communication from child to parent A that parent B probably shouldn't be seeing it, but you have things, shared accounts, shared access, linking, all these fun things. And you can see certain things that are linked automatically. You can blind carbon copy. You can have so much information to say, that's what someone really thinks about me.
Right.
Or having shared email, shared passwords. There's just all kinds of things that are more issues now, and especially post-COVID, that people just don't realize that children sometimes have too much information, too much access to information. Every time that phone rings, they're looking. And I will say this, some trials I've had are so close it came down to how the other parent is listed in the cell phone contact of the other person.
What their name is.
And I had one that the dad had the mother as super B word. Yeah. And when the phone rang, guess what? The child saw super B, whatever, and that's what it showed. And how is that supposed to affect a child's mental health and well-being? Well-being. Judges are aware of that, and that's stuff that I could easily prove, because I would have a screenshot. I would have clients, be prepared to testify to the facts as they are. It's just a simple thing like that. That was done, subconsciously. Just here's what I think, and here's what I'm going to put them in. But when phones are out there and children can access them, and sometimes phones look very similar. I don't know what phone Donna has, but she could have her phone here and it could ring, and I might think it's mine. Mm-hmm. I might grab it. But whatever the case is, children don't need to see the drama between parents, and too often, more now than ever, with iPads and all this, it's just amazing what kids can come across and access information that they shouldn't. And
so what's your next? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have to say, that's why I tend to video record sessions with kids when I'm doing court-related cases, because in the past, they may dispute because a child may say something like, Donna forced me to say that, or she pressured me, or she was, scaring me. And so I've learned, and it's really actually since COVID, where I'm like, I started videotaping everything. Right. So anytime I'm working with a child, I video record it. and that can be used by the court. They can see exactly what the child was saying, how
Right.
that child was saying it, their demeanor while they were saying it,
And how you were asking
and
the
how
questions.
I was asking it, and they can see where this child's mind is at regarding their perspective of each parent. So this technology has given us actually opportunity to really show what the kids are being exposed to. I've had many a family where it was the text messages between parent and child that was used to show how this parent's influencing their child. And I'm like, it's coming out now. It's
Yeah.
being really visual. You can see what the parents are doing. And I think that's part of what's motivating me to really help get this going is we can't pretend it's not happening. We can't pretend the kids are just like, oh, they don't notice anything. Now we're seeing it's
They
really
notice
messed
everything.
Right.
up. Yeah.
They notice everything.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, they do.
yeah, I learned that the hard way sometimes. So,
Yeah.
There you go.
so what is your next step? Where are you going now with AFCC? What do you need to do next?
We need members. We
Members is
need
where it's
at
at, right.
least 75 members to become an official chapter. So we need folks to join the parent organization.
Okay, which
And-
is and it's AFCC,
AFCC
right?
is
And
the parent
like I say, you go to the
organization.
website and you can just become a member.
Correct.
And that's the that's the umbrella
Correct.
organization.
Correct.
And then once you've done that, then you can say, I want to be a member of this Nevada chapter.
Correct, which is not available yet.
Right.
So once you become a member of the umbrella parent organization, hold off on selecting a chapter, and in the next couple months, then you can select a chapter.
Well,
and
that's
become
what I
part
mean.
of
Should they
Nevada.
contact you and say,
Please.
please put my name on your list.
Please.
I have become a member of the AFCC, and I'd like to be part of this when you get this all nailed down.
Please, absolutely,
Correct.
please
Okay.
do. And then we'll put you on that list and we'll notify you when our chapter is ready and ready for you to join and become a Nevada member.
And we'll provide your contact info to the viewers
Yeah.
so that they know where to go, where to get a hold of you.
That would be great.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share before because we're running out of time here?
Not really, just it's exciting stuff, and we just want to make the system work better. There's no perfect system, but some people say the system is broken, but there are ways to make it better, and the best we can do is things like this to
All
provide
systems
resources.
are broken.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly,
when you
but-
come down to it, they're all broken.
We can improve everywhere.
improve.
That's right.
That's
It's
what
just
we
an
want to have.
ongoing effort to keep improving and making it better. So
We got the future in our hands. These kids are our future. And if we can give them the opportunity to develop in a healthy way without being influenced by parent drama, that's our future and our children's future and our grandchildren's future that just improves because of that. So by creating this chapter and getting us all working together as a team, we can really help children and families. That's my ultimate goal. Children and families. It's not just networking or, providers with providers, but when we work as a team together, we are seriously changing the future. And that's why I think we're motivated to do this. We have seen too much of it going badly.
excellent.
It's time to change it.
Agreed.
So there you have it.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank you all for watching, and please check out the website AFCC. Information's on the screen, and if for no other reason, become a member so we can help get this chapter built, and we can. If you know someone who is in the business, whether in the legal realm or healthcare, please share this with them and help us get the word out there. And so, Donna, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us
Jason,
on.
thank you. A pleasure.
Absolutely.
I'm proud of both of you, and
Oh,
I'm
thanks.
glad to see. This is I've lived in Nevada for a long time. This is what Nevada used to be, and I see us trending back in that direction, and I'm really, really grateful for that. So,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
and to you out there, show us how it's done. Thank you.